From the city, from the suburbs, from the dark road at 2 a.m., wherever you are right now, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Cathedral.
I've been sitting here for about an hour, trying to figure out how to start this. And I keep deleting what I write because none of it is big enough. None of it is honest enough. So let me just say it plain. On May 8th, 2026, the United States government began releasing classified files on unidentified anomalous phenomena to the public. Not a leak. Not a whistleblower in a hotel room. The White House. The Pentagon. The FBI. The Director of National Intelligence. NASA. All of them, on the same day, in coordinated statements telling the American people, here are the files. No clearance required. Go look for yourself. And I am recording this the same day it happened. I have been waiting for this day for over 40 years. Some of you have been waiting longer. Some of you gave up waiting. Some of the people who should be hearing this tonight are gone. And that is the part of this I haven't figured out how to sit with yet. Tonight we're going to go through exactly what happened today, what was released, what it contains, what it means, and more importantly, what it doesn't mean yet. We're going to talk about the Pursue program, the Apollo 17 transcripts, the FBI photographs, the coordinated statements from every major intelligence agency in the country. We're going to talk about David Grush's warning and J.D. Vance's demons, and Jeremy Corbell's sleeping dog, and the 44% of Americans who already believed this was coming. But first I need to say something that I don't think enough people are going to say today, because they'll be too busy arguing about whether the photos are convincing or whether this is a distraction from the economy, or whether the Apollo dots are just debris. What happened today is the largest shift in the relationship between a government and its people on the subject of non-human intelligence in the history of civilization. I need you to hear that. Not the history of America, the history of civilization. There is no precedent for a sitting government, the most powerful government on earth, opening a public portal, no security clearance required, and saying, here is what we have on things we cannot explain, in the sky, near our ships, above the moon, alongside our aircraft. Go look. That happened today. Whatever is in the files, whatever comes next week and the week after that, the door opened today. And doors like that don't close. Let's get into what actually dropped. Because the details matter, and I don't want to be the guy who tells you the sky fell without showing you the crack. The program is called Pursue, Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters. That's not a leaked code name from a Reddit thread. That's the official White House designation. And the files are being hosted at war.gov/UFO, which, if you told me 5 years ago that the Department of War would be running a public UFO database, I would have asked what you were smoking and whether you had enough to share. This first batch contains several categories of material. First, photographs from the Apollo 12 and Apollo 17 lunar missions. One photo, taken from the surface of the moon during Apollo 17, shows 3 distinct dots suspended in the sky above the lunar surface. 3 objects. In the sky. Above the moon. Where there is no sky. I want you to sit with that for a second. There's no atmosphere on the moon. There are no birds. There are no weather balloons. There are no swamp gas reflections off of Venus. There are 3 dots in a photograph taken by American astronauts standing on the surface of the moon. And the United States government just handed it to you and said, we can't explain this. Second, transcripts. Communications between Apollo 17 operators and mission control. And I'm going to read you parts of this because I think the words matter. One operator says, quote, now we've got a few very bright particles or fragments or something that go drifting by as we maneuver, end quote. Mission control replies, Roger, understand, like it's a weather report. Then another operator says, there's a whole bunch of big ones. On my window, down there, just bright, it looks like the 4th of July. Out of Ron's window. And then the first operator comes back and says, yes, now you can see some of them in shape. They're very jagged, angular fragments. Jagged, angular, tumbling. These are not words that describe ice crystals or paint flecks or thruster exhaust. These are words that describe objects with geometry, objects with structure, objects that someone on a spacecraft orbiting the moon felt compelled to report to Houston because they had never seen anything like them before. And the third category is FBI photographic evidence from New Year's Eve 1999, images showing unidentified objects in the same frame as United States military aircraft, not reported by some guy with a cell phone in his backyard, documented by the Federal Bureau of Investigation on the last night of the 20th century. Now, I want to be very clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying these files prove alien life. I'm not saying the 3 dots above the moon are a spacecraft. I'm not saying the jagged angular fragments were manufactured by someone from Zeta Reticuli. I don't know what they are, neither do you. Neither does the United States government, because if they did, they wouldn't be calling them unidentified. But what I am saying is this. The United States government just told you publicly, on the record, that they have photographs and transcripts and FBI evidence of things they cannot identify, and they've been sitting on them in some cases for over 50 years. That's the story, not what the objects are. The story is that they had this, and they didn't tell you, and now they are. And you have to ask yourself why now. I want to walk you through how we got here, because the timeline matters. February 19th, 2026. President Trump posts on Truth Social that he is directing the Secretary of War and other agencies to begin releasing government files on, and I'm going to read his exact words, quote, alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters, end quote. He ends it with God bless America because of course he does. Now it's worth noting what prompted this. Just days before, former President Obama said on a podcast that aliens are, quote, real, end quote. He later walked it back, saying he'd seen no evidence, but that the odds are good. There's life out there. Trump's response was to accuse Obama of revealing classified information and then announce his own declassification effort, because if there is one thing that motivates this particular president, it is not being outdone. And I want to be honest about something. I don't care about the politics of this. I genuinely do not care which president gets the credit. If Donald Trump is the president who opens the door, then thank you, sir. You opened the door. If it had been Obama or Biden or Kennedy or Eisenhower, same thing. The door is the thing, not the hand. On March 31st, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who chairs the House Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, sent a letter to Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon demanding 46 specific UAP video clips. The Pentagon missed the deadline. That's not unusual. That's the pattern. Promise, delay, partial delivery, promise again. We've been watching this dance for decades. Then on May 5th, just 3 days ago, David Grush gave an interview. Grush, for anyone new to this show, is the former Air Force intelligence officer who testified before Congress in 2023 that the United States government possesses retrieved non-human craft and that there has been an active disinformation campaign to conceal it. He is now advising Congressman Eric Burleson. And 3 days ago, Grush said something that I think is going to matter more than anything in the files themselves. He said, quote, I see a lot of power plays, a lot of games, a lot of positioning. Certain agencies are moving people into positions to kind of control the information release. End quote. Control the information release, not prevent it. Control it. That's a different word, and it tells you something important about where we are. The fight is no longer over whether disclosure happens. The fight is over who controls the narrative when it does. And then on May 6th, FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed on Sean Hannity's podcast that the FBI had delivered its first tranche of documents to the Interagency Committee, and he said something that I've played back about 6 times now. He said, quote, the American public wants the documents. We've already delivered the documents. They're coming out. That's it. End quote. That's it. No hedging. No maybe. No pending review. That's it. And today, May 8th, they came out. What struck me most today wasn't the files. It was the chorus. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War. Quote, "These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation, and it's time the American people see it for themselves." End quote. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. Quote, "The American people have long sought transparency about the government's knowledge of unidentified anomalous phenomena. Under President Trump's leadership, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is actively coordinating the intelligence community's declassification efforts." End quote. She called today the first in what will be an ongoing joint declassification and release effort. Kash Patel, FBI Director. Quote, "For the first time in history, the American people have unfettered access to declassified government files on unidentified anomalous phenomena, a level of transparency that no prior administration has delivered." End quote. Jared Isaacman, NASA Administrator, the man who flew on SpaceX missions, the man who walked in space. Quote, "At NASA, our job is to bring the brightest minds and most advanced scientific instruments to bear, follow the data, and share what we learn." End quote. He called for unlocking the secrets of the universe, every single one of them, on the same day, with prepared statements. The Secretary of War, the Intelligence Chief, the FBI Director, the NASA Administrator, the White House. I want you to understand what that coordination means. This was not one agency going rogue. This was not a leak. This was not a FOIA request that finally got processed. This was the full weight of the United States government saying, in one voice, on one day, we are telling you about things in the sky that we cannot explain. That has never happened before. Not in America, not in any country on Earth, not in the history of recorded civilization. And I know some of you are thinking, it's politics, it's a distraction. It's Trump trying to change the subject. And you know what? Maybe that's part of it. Jeremy Corbell himself warned that the first wave would not be shocking. Congressman Burchett said the releases would come in weekly installments, slow and steady, to maintain national security. A Gallup poll from just last month shows a record 55% of Americans say their financial situation is getting worse. I am not naive about the possibility that a government might choose to look up at the stars when it doesn't want people looking at their bank accounts. But here's the thing about doors. It doesn't matter why someone opened it. Once it's open, you can walk through. And what's on the other side doesn't change based on the motivation of the person who turned the knob. And then there's the Vice President of the United States. J.D. Vance, in an interview, was asked about the UFO files. He said he's been, quote, obsessed, end quote, with them since taking office. He said he's been trying to find time to investigate Area 51. And then he said something that everyone in this audience should pay very close attention to. He invoked his Christian faith and said he believes the sightings reported as aliens are actually the work of spiritual demons. Now, if you've been with this show since the beginning, you know that we explored this exact framework in our very first episode. The idea that what we're seeing might not be extraterrestrial visitors from another star system, but something interdimensional, something that has always been here, something that different cultures have called different names: demons, jinn, archons, diamonds, asherahs, and that the modern language of aliens and spacecraft might just be the newest vocabulary for an encounter that's as old as consciousness itself. The Vice President of the United States just said that on a podcast. And nobody in the mainstream media treated it like the earthquake it is, because what Vance is really saying, whether he knows it or not, is that the government possesses evidence of non-human intelligence, and his framework for understanding it is theological, not scientific, not military, theological. That's not a small thing. That is the Vice President saying implicitly that the evidence is real. It's just that his explanation for it involves the spiritual realm. And if that doesn't shake you, I don't know what will, because it means someone with access to classified briefings has seen enough to need an explanation. And the one he reached for was demons. Meanwhile, David Grush is warning about sleeping dogs, about compartmentalized legacy programs, about people being repositioned within agencies to control what gets out and what doesn't. Jeremy Corbell's documentary, also called Sleeping Dog, opened in theaters today, the same day as the Pursue release. And if you think that timing is coincidental, well, I have some flying saucers I'd like to sell you, slightly used, government surplus. Corbell has been saying for weeks that the first wave would not be shocking, nothing dramatic initially, he said. And honestly, he's right. Apollo photographs and operator transcripts from 1972 are not a crashed saucer on the White House lawn. FBI photos from 1999 are not a body in a hangar. The government is managing this. They are releasing what they consider safe, what won't cause panic, what lets them say they're being transparent without having to answer the hard questions. But I want to point out something. Even a managed disclosure is disclosure. Even a controlled release means the thing being controlled is real. You don't build an interagency committee with the Pentagon, the FBI, the DNI, and NASA to release things that don't exist. You don't create a program called Pursue and host it on a government.gov domain to publish fairy tales. The infrastructure of this release is itself the evidence. The bureaucracy is the proof. I got into this in the early 80s. I was a kid in Chicago. I didn't have the language for any of this. I didn't have a framework or a community or a podcast or a government website. I had Art Bell on the radio late at night and a couple of dog-eared books and a feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. I didn't even see my own UFO until 33 years later. But I knew. Something in me knew. The way you know a storm is coming before the sky changes color. I spent decades reading, listening, wondering, and mostly keeping quiet about it because the world wasn't ready to hear it without laughing. And I know there are people listening right now who have a version of that same story. Maybe you saw something. Maybe you just felt something. Maybe you told someone and they looked at you the way people look at someone who's lost their mind. And you stopped talking about it. Maybe for years. Maybe forever. Maybe you're hearing this right now and it's the first time in decades that someone is talking about what you experienced like it might be real. This show exists because I believe this day would come. Not because I'm a prophet, not because I had inside information, but because the evidence was always there, and the truth has a weight to it, and eventually that weight becomes too heavy for even a government to carry. 44% of Americans already believed the government was hiding information about UFOs before today. After today, that number is going to go up because the government just confirmed it. I want to talk about what this means for us, not politically, not scientifically, for us, for the species, for every single person on this planet who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone. If we are not alone, and I want to be very careful here because we are not at that conclusion yet, but if we are not alone, then everything changes. Not tomorrow, not next week, but over the course of the next generation, everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe, about the nature of consciousness, about the meaning of our religions and our mythologies and our history, all of it comes back to the table. Everything gets re-examined. And that is terrifying. And it is also, and I mean this, the most beautiful possibility that has ever been available to the human mind, because it means the universe is not empty. It means this vast, cold, impossible darkness that stretches in every direction from our little blue rock is not a void. It's a neighborhood. And we've been living in it this whole time without knowing who our neighbors are. I don't know if the files at war.gov/UFO contain proof of that. I suspect they don't. Not yet. This first batch looks like the opening move in a long game. And Tim Burchett was probably right when he said it would roll out in weekly installments. We're going to be doing this for months, maybe years, each release a little more than the last, each one pushing the boundary of what the government is willing to say out loud. But the boundary moved today. It moved in a direction it has never moved before. And this show, this cathedral, this thing that I built in the dark with nothing but 40 years of wondering, exists specifically so that someone would be here to say that when it happened. So I'm saying it. Something moved today. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know what it means. But it moved. And we saw it. Go to war.gov/UFO. Read the files yourself. Look at the Apollo photographs. Read the transcripts. Form your own opinion. Don't let me tell you what to think. Don't let anyone tell you what to think. For the first time in your life, the government is saying, here, look. So look. And then if you're like me, maybe go outside, look up, and know that whatever you're feeling right now, that mix of awe and fear and disbelief and hope and anger that they waited this long, you're not alone in feeling it. 40 years I've been staring at the sky, and tonight I know, at least I know this much, I was never crazy. None of us were.
I'll see you in the